Hold still! You lied to me, you lied to me! In the face, in my face. Put it in the peanut butter. In the face, in my face, in the face, in my face. In the face, in my face.
I thought you said this guy was a Christian. What is this?
Liberate tu te me.
Hey, Peter Franson from ChristianGeekCentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Someone requested a while back that I give a tour of my bookshelf in my office. I don't think I'm going to have time to talk about the whole thing, but I've set up an egg timer that will give me roughly 10 minutes because it's kind of an old, grumpy egg timer that doesn't work the most awesome. So roughly 10 minutes, and we'll see how far I can get in 10 minutes just talking about kind of what's on my bookshelf and what kind of geeky stuff I'm into, or at least was at one time. All right, so starting up here, well, those are just some scripts for Spirit Blade: A World of Shadows that are just kind of up there right now. But this is the Sword of Shannara series, or I recently found out it might be actually pronounced Shannara, which I hate. I am going to rebel against that official pronunciation and say Shannara. But this is Terry Brooks. This was the first, like, I guess kind of adult fantasy that I really got into. I first started reading fantasy novels, like Piers Anthony was a big name for me in the Zamp series of novels. I read those in junior high, but eventually their sense of humor, I kind of outgrew it, and these books were more serious, and I just love these books. And of course, Sword of Shannara, when it came out, and I think maybe still today, is criticized for being basically a ripoff of the Lord of the Rings and that story about these young characters coming of age. They're the only ones that can save the world, and they have to go find a special weapon or go on a special quest to prevent this ancient evil that's going to awaken and destroy the world from doing its thing, so they got to go somewhere and do something special. So, yes, absolutely, it mimics that, and many of the books follow that same formula, but so many fantasy novels do, and his prose is not old and cranky and dusty and, cranky's not the right word, but like, oh my gosh, I can't read Tolkien, sorry, I just am not sophisticated or smart enough or whatever you might want to say, but it is freaking old and creaky and dusty, so I much prefer modern fantasy. Terry Brooks, awesome. Still haven't read this first book, Legends of Shannara, The Bearers of the Black Staff, but the rest of them on that bookshelf I've read, and the series continues over that way. Oh, I guess I might as well talk about Brent Weeks, though. I interviewed Brent Weeks on the Spirit Blade Underground podcast. Awesome guy, and I really suspected after reading his books, despite lots of F-bombs and really dark violence and just a dark, nasty world that those books are set in, his themes and his ideas, it was like you could create an annotated version of that would just be detailing scripture references freaking on every page. And so, with all my suspicions, I emailed the guy who eventually got back to me. He was really hesitant for a while because he just wasn't sure. There's lots of, tough decisions that have to be made when you're publishing in the mainstream to kind of out yourself as a believer, which he eventually did publicly for the first time on the Spirit Blade Underground podcast. And so anyway, New York Times bestselling author Brent Weeks, the Night Angel trilogy, the best fantasy I have read to date, or at least the most enjoyable for me. Let's see here. Oh, beyond that, my Breaking Bad Blu-rays, I just discovered that this last summer. Finally got around to watching it. Not a geek series per se, but since they made action figures and stuff, I was like, this must have some geek appeal. And it totally does. It's definitely got that kind of vigilante, kind of like evil Batman vibe to it. But anyway, really enjoy Breaking Bad. As much as you can, I guess, enjoy Breaking Bad. And if you've seen it, you know what I mean. All right, moving on down here, more books. Gail Z. Martin and what is this called? The Chronicles of the Necromancer. These are interesting books. I was recently trying to read through them a second time and just started to lose interest after the first two books. They do get a little bit too much into kind of court politics and stuff that I'm not at all interested in, but they're dark and supernatural, and they draw a lot from, I would say, kind of like New Age beliefs about spirits and near-death experiences and stuff like that. They draw a lot from that in terms of like how they present the fantasy world. And the main character, his main ability is interacting with dead people and the undead and stuff like that. So there's definitely some broken ideas being presented in there that would be harmful if they're adopted. But I do enjoy, for the most part, her writing style and just kind of this. I'm a fan of dark fantasy. So haven't read these follow-up books. I bought them a while back because I did enjoy the original quadrilogy. There should be 4 books there. One of them is down still on my nightstand, I think, right now. But I haven't gotten around to those 2 yet. I wanted to try and reread the original quadrilogy first, and now I'm struggling, so I don't know if I'll get around to those 2 books. All right, over here, oh, my beloved Farscape. These are actually the DVDs. My favorite TV series of all time. I'm watching it on Blu-ray for the first time right now and talking about each episode as I finish it up on the Spirit Blade Underground podcast. Let's see here. What can I say that I haven't already said and won't already say at the end of each episode of the podcast? So you can stay tuned for that if you want to. Awesome, awesome show. They are working on not a reboot, but a continuation of this series that's going to involve some of the main characters from the series. I can't give I don't want to give spoilers by potentially talking more details, but it is in development right now. I'm so excited for that. All right. Terry Goodkind. This, until I discovered Brent Weeks, was my go-to ultimate fantasy author. Really, he writes dark, serious, intense fantasy, and he also deals with truth a lot. And the idea of, he has a lot of ideas in there that I think are really healthy ideas about, being objective and seeking out truth regardless of feelings and what you might fear to be true or what you might want to be true. So many great ideas, but they do eventually fall apart, and I don't even think the author realizes it. He subscribes to a philosophy called objectivism, which, despite its name, it really it has no ultimate foundation. Anyway, I won't get into all that right now, but it is an interesting philosophy to just kind of pick apart, because on the surface it has many great values, but the basis for those values is substanceless. It's really interesting. It's just kind of ultimately something that is believed and subscribed to for this because you want to believe it and you want to subscribe to it. Very interesting and a little self-contradictory, but in many ways has some great things to say. But that's the philosophy. You don't have to be interested or have any feelings one way or the other about the philosophy to enjoy these books. I think they're really, if you like dark, disturbing sometimes fantasy where characters are put through the freaking ringer and you're just agonizing for their situation. A great series for you. So that continues on down there. Many, many books in that series. So if you really like a multi-part series, the Sword of Truth series by Terry Goodkind is definitely worth checking out. Speaking of swords, I'm a big fan of the Highlander, both the movies and the TV series. So this is my collection of the TV series on DVD, and that is actually maybe when I'm done with Farscape, I probably won't do a Farscape shawarma for it, or a Highlander shawarma, but I think I might start making my way through the Highlander series again when I'm done with Farscape, because I really do enjoy it, even with some of its 90s cheesiness. I just love all those quickenings. They're just, Adrian Paul freaking just knows how to get zapped. So, let's see below that, my collection of the Bruce Timm animated series of DC stuff. Fantastic era of television. Oh my gosh. Wonderful stuff. I still haven't collected all the Batman Beyond. I wasn't really a big fan of it at the time, but I'm kind of opening my heart to it, so I might get around to it eventually. I do have the Batman Beyond movie there, just because it kind of creates a nice cap for some of the plot threads of the original Batman animated series. And then you'll see one of the DVDs is missing. It's downstairs right now because my boys still like to watch it, but that's the revamp of the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe animated series. This came out in the early 2000s and is great. I mean, awesome animation and I think, action that even adults can enjoy. It definitely does have more kid appeal probably than adult appeal, but I just love their treatment of, if you just like, that kind of like sword and sorcery fantasy, and then you want like technology thrown in just to make things interesting, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is definitely an animated series worth checking out. Not the original 80s one, but this one produced in the early 2000s. It didn't last long, only like 1.5 seasons or something like that, but I think definitely worth checking out. Okay, moving on down here, let's do some more books. The Fiona McIntosh books. especially this first trilogy, the Quickening trilogy with Mirren's Gift. Man, this. There's lots of like body swapping. I can't really describe it any other way, and it's been long enough now that I could probably stand to read it again. But again, if you like kind of serious, sometimes dark fantasy, that's a series I would, and character driven. All of my fantasy series that I read, I really demand that they be character driven, and by that I mean don't tell me what's happening as much as tell me how people feel about what's happening. I want to experience and sympathize with their terror, their hopes, their dreams, their nightmares. You know, I want to be feeling with the characters. I don't want to know every detail of the buttons on their clothes and every doorknob that they touch and how the flowers all smell. And I don't need to know every freaking detail about every panel of wood that exists in this castle. Let's see here. Oh, also, this is a bit of a shame, but James Clemens, this is a really interesting and, again, a pretty serious, dark series. And he isn't really writing anymore, which is a shame, because this little 5-book series I really enjoyed for some of the same reasons that I enjoy my other fantasy series. Okay, moving on over here. We've got the original Superman serials from what do you call it? I can't remember. Like 1930s, I think. And those are still pretty watchable. It's not something I pull out all the time, but I mean, like, if I'm ever having like a special Superman day or something like that, that's something that I would pull out for fun. Let's see. Condor Man. Yes, Condor Man. Awesome childhood movie experience. The first superhero movie that I really loved and could just watch endlessly. I used to be able to quote that entire movie. And then we got an interesting DVD about just kind of the adventures in voice acting, and that I thought was kind of interesting. Just kind of gives you a behind-the-scenes look at what that career is like, and how it's not all that glamorous and pays like crap, but it's still an interesting kind of career to be in. Not many people can make a actual career out of it. They're usually supplementing with something else, either other acting jobs or just other work of some kind. But that's a neat one. If you're into just the behind the scenes of video games and anime, that's an interesting DVD, Adventures in Voice Acting. And then I've got the first 3 seasons of the Incredible Hulk series, which I came back to when I realized that Bill Bixby is just a phenomenal actor. It was. And, tragically died of cancer years after making this series. But he was way ahead of his time. This show, in some ways, was way ahead of its time in terms of the acting that he brought, the quality and the subtlety of acting that he brought to the character of David Bruce Banner in that series. Makes it still very, very watchable today. Then we got the Flash 1990s TV series, which is being called back to quite a bit in the current Flash TV series. And this one is also pretty still watchable. I would say probably after watching, it won't be watchable for much longer with the new Flash series and the effects being so much better and it not having the same cheesiness. Oh crap, there's my timer, as the 90s series. But still in many ways watchable and definitely kind of echoes some of the dark sensibilities of superheroes that were ushered in by the original Tim Burton Batman movies. And then lastly, Daredevil Director's Cut. Not a super great movie. I'm not going to say that I love it, but I will say that the Director's Cut is tons better than the original cut. And if you like Daredevil and you've never tried out the director's cut of Daredevil, it's definitely worth a try. Okay, we're out of time. So, man, more books like music and books and books and books and books. And then we got all kinds of video games and role-playing games and more nerd hobby books and board games and, oh man, tons of stuff. I'll have to try and cover it another time. Bye-bye.
For thine is the Christian and the geek and the central.com. Resistance is futile. You will be assimilated.